Welcome back to Dearest Dispatch and welcome back to I Watched All of Formula One so you don't have to. In this series I am going over every single Formula One race of all time, starting in the 1950 Formula One season and going all the way to the 2020 something Formula One season, whichever one we end up landing on at the end of the series, because it's probably going to take several years. But today we are continuing going over the 1950 Formula One season with round 6, the 1950 French Grand Prix. So the 1950 French Grand Prix was the 6th round of the 1950 Formula One season. It was also the penultimate round of the 1950 Formula One season. It was held on the 2nd of July 1950 at the Circuit Ramer. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, I definitely am. And yeah, it was race 6 of 7. So anyway, it was the 6th of 7 races in the 1950 Formula One season, and a total of 22 cars entered the event, 4 of which ultimately didn't start the race. These are 4 of which didn't start the race, which are Franco Comotti, who didn't attend the event, Eugene Chaboud didn't start the race in his own car, instead sharing Philippe Etoncelin's Talbot Lago, and the 2 Ferrari entries of Luigi Villoresa and Alberto Ascari ultimately withdrew in practice, most likely due to mechanical problems. But let's go over the Circuit Rémy-Jeux. The Circuit Rémy-Jeux is located in the Champagne or the Champagne region of France, and it was a collection of roads that was built into a purpose-built circuit at the time. Obviously, it's not used in the modern Formula One day, and I think the last time it was used was 1966, which I'm sure we'll go over that Grand Prix eventually in several episodes' time. And yeah, it consisted of only 5 corners, so a pretty basic track, all things considered, especially in comparison to Spa, which we just covered. And yeah, interesting that there was so much variance between all the different tracks and all the different circuits. And this one obviously is just a series of corners. It's an oval on steroids, basically, or it's just an oval. It's just an oval that's been slightly disfigured. So yeah, one thing about the series is I always include photos of the time, but I never actually talk about them. So this time I'm going to talk about them a little bit. Yeah, this is what it looked like back in the day. This is probably the start-finish straight. It was probably taken around this point. And you can see all the cars on the start zooming away. There they are, lined up right there in the other photo down the bottom. So pretty cool that we still have photos of all of these events. Obviously, we don't have as much as specific other events. For example, there's more coverage for the British Grand Prix, or the 1950 British Grand Prix, which I covered in another video on this channel. So go check that out if you want. But obviously, there's more coverage of events like that. So it's cool that we have any photos at all. Drew quite a crowd, all things considered. So anyway, let's get into it, starting off with, of course, qualifying. Yay! So qualifying, Fangio put on a stunning display with a 187 km per hour, which is 116 miles per hour practice lap, with the Ferraris ultimately not starting their 3-litre cars. The main opposition was to come from the Talbots, complete with dual ignition engines with 12 spark plugs, which I'm assuming is new. That's why it's discussed. And yeah, so in first place we have Juan Manuel Fangio, 2 seconds ahead of anybody else, which is extremely impressive, followed by Nino Farina, Luigi Fagioli, Philippe Etoncelin, Yves Giroux Capatus, Louis Rosier, Franco Roll, Jose Fualan Gonzalez, Pierre Lever, and Eugene Chaboud. It's to note that there was no Ferraris in this race other than Peter Whitehead, who was in 19th. So yeah, based on my memory, I think there's a lot more races here than there was in Spa, but there might have been a similar amount, I'm not sure. And yeah, so yeah, let's get into it. That's qualifying. I'm not sure why this time is unknown. It probably just was lost in translation, unfortunately, because this was quite a long time ago. It was like 76 years ago now. So yeah, no Ferraris. Juan Manuel Fangio, way ahead of the pack, as per usual. So yeah, let's get into the race. We also have some more images of the French Grand Prix here. That's a reused image, I apologize. As I said, there's not many. And apologize for the low quality as well, but this is presumably the end of the race with Fangio there. Spoilers, calm down now, spoilers. Followed by somebody, the number 19. Who's the number 19? That is nobody. I don't know who that is. Anyway, let's get into the race. So, ultimately, the Talbot Lagos would come to suffer radiator problems and overheat, which allowed Fangio and Fagioli to lead home another Alpha demonstration run, whilst Farina ultimately succumbed to a fuel pump problem. Peter Whitehead finished third, despite a fractured head gasket in the last 2 laps, and then Philippe Etoncelin qualified and drove 26 laps of the race in his number 16 Talbot Lago. Eugene Chabaud, who did not start the race despite qualifying in his own car, took over Etoncelin's vehicle for 33 laps of the race, and they shared 2 points for 5th place, so not bad result for them. Charles Pozzi ultimately qualified and drove 14 laps of the race in the 26 Talbot Lago. Luis Rosier, whose own car had already retired, took over the number 26 for 42 laps of the race, along with David Hampshire, who qualified in the number 34 Maserati, drove it in the race until he was forced to retire. David Murray, named substitute driver for the car, was not used, unfortunately, during the Grand Prix for him. But the 64-lap race was ultimately won by the Alfa Romeo driver of Juan Manuel Fangio after he started from pole position. His teammate, Luigi Fagioli, finished second, and Peter Whitehead took third in a privateer Ferrari. So as is the case with a lot of these older races, in terms of exactly what happened, there's just not much information out there, or at least nothing that I could find on Wikipedia. So yeah, there's not really much to discuss in terms of the race. So let's talk about the results where we can see more. And yeah, overall, as is expected, there was quite an amount of retirees. I'm not sure why Nino Farina is ahead of Cabatus or Gerard Cabatus there, but as is expected at this point in the season, there's lots of engine problems, lots of overheating, and yeah, of course the Ferraris withdrew. But Juan Manuel Fangio ultimately won the race. I think this was his 2nd race win of the season, followed by Luigi Fagioli, Peter Whitehead, Robert Manzon, Eugene Chabaud, Philippe Etoncelin, Charles Pozzi, Luis Rosier, Nino Farina, and Yves Gerard Cabatus. So yeah, that was the race. Overall, pretty dominant race for Fangio from the look of it, being nearly 30 seconds ahead of anybody else. So shout out Fangio. He's on the Formula One Mount Rushmore. Apologies, for a reason. Yeah, solid result. Alfa Romeo continues their dominance. Let's talk about the championship standings, with Juan Manuel Fangio jumping 2 places into 1st place position with a total of 26 points, followed by Luigi Fagioli retaining his 2nd place position with 24 points, with a 2-place drop for Giuseppe Farina, with 22 points, as he finished. I don't think he finished the race, unless I'm mistaken, unless I'm blind. Nino Farina, yeah, that's him. He finished 7th. He had a fuel pump problem, unfortunately for him. And then again, Johnny Parsons retaining his 5th place. Again, important to note that Johnny Parsons only participated in the Indianapolis 500 for this specific Formula One season. So next, coming up, is the ultimate event of the 1950 Formula One calendar. It is the 1950 Monza Italian Grand Prix, the first one ever. So that was the 1950 French Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and all that other YouTuber stuff. I would greatly appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week's episode, where we will be covering the 1950 Italian Grand Prix. And overall, thank you so much for watching. So I hope you have a great, wonderful day. Bye for now. Peace.